Hi, and welcome to another episode of Tuesday at 2. It's Better Together with my sister Allison Nissen and I. We started this journey together a few years ago to really interview some wonderful women that are doing some special things. And today we're fortunate to have Leslie McCarthy with us. She's from 361 Firm, which is she's a strategic advisor for water. The firm is a strategic advisor for water education development through collaborative educational entrepreneurship and community investment that pairs institutional investors, philanthropies, and thought leaders. And one thing I've loved about getting to know Leslie is she is definitely not short of a lot of great insight, wonderful projects, passions, and all that stuff. So we're going to have a great conversation today. Leslie, thank you so much for joining us.
It's great to be with you both after meeting you in 2019 at Denison's Remix Entrepreneurship
Yeah,
event.
we share the same alumni. So we met each other at an alumni network, which was awesome. And then we've been connected ever since.
Yeah.
So I'd love to, before we started the show, we were preparing and we were talking about just the value of collaborative networking and what a collaborative network is. Can you just share with us, what exactly from your point of view, collaborative networking is?
Well, I will say my opinion of how that has evolved in my life has been, as an example, when you're raising children, you end up learning that you're not raising them by yourself. You're raising them in family. You're raising them alongside of, supportive friends and in community. And to large degree, I think with the changes of a lot of technology options and the challenges of the last couple of years, that more than ever people have gone down a path of understanding that it's kind of like being in a study group in college. If there's a really tough subject that you're trying to work through or some study problems, you get together in small group and you can figure it out better and more completely. So collaborative networking in my experience has been just a real constant dialogue and conversation back and forth, listening, learning, sharing, not being afraid to step up with an idea, a crazy thought, because it's a real interesting unfolding. Like this morning, we were on a collaborative call at 10:30, and suddenly we're talking about children's cartoons and how we can recapture joy along the lines of what we remember when we were growing up. And before you know it, we're riffing on cartoons and shows to this day that probably would benefit us all to see again, the Snoopies and the silly programs we watch on Saturdays. So anyhow, in answer to your question, I think collaboration is just listening, learning, and ultimately recognizing the importance of being part of a team.
And Leslie, can you tell me what's the difference between the collaborative networks and mentoring itself?
So, I would respond to that by saying a collaborative network could be more like a framework, and collaboration to me is a communications ability and style. Mentorship, it's actually interesting. I thought that there would be this deep academic framework around mentorship. And the reality is, mentorship is just kind of a matter of meeting the person where they are, listening to what they have on their mind, and sharing objective insights so you can navigate forward. So, in answer to your comment, I think that they're similar, they're interrelated, they're complementary. Mentorship could also be sort of a template. Like, I originally thought it was going to be focused on providing internship and summer job opportunities and full-time employment after college graduation. But then the more I spoke with students and young professionals who came into my world, I realized it was very much developmental, and it was just a matter of meeting them where they were and unfolding what they needed at the time. And it's been a real exchange in the sense that I didn't expect to get the great benefits of having these fabulous young people in my life. They've taught me a lot of important lessons. And when I have questions I'm working on, I can think of real experts in the field, and sometimes they're still in college. So,
yeah, I always find it really simple, but a stretch of like when you're looking at anyone and you recognize they've got something that you don't have and you can learn from them, it ends up you get like a quicker, like a deeper relationship and a trust. And you've mentioned this before, like the reverse mentorship, where you have people from college that actually can mentor other people because they have knowledge on a subject that you may not have knowledge. And I think that's such like a testament to your character of like the type of person like, okay, I'd like to learn from you. Can you share more about that concept of reverse mentorship and how you kind of embrace that?
well, it's been a great delight, and I never would have projected that that was even a thing. But my experiences have been that as I would get to know some of the young people in my life, not only would they teach me about what their priorities were and what they were experiencing in campus life or in athletics or socially speaking, but many of them were from international realm. So they taught me about whole new cultures and what their upbringing was like, which was very different. And to this day, they continue to tell me stories, and they paint pictures for me of their lives and their challenges. And of course, I see the huge opportunities for them. So it's a wonderful exchange. Um, as an example, I was introduced to Youssef at college campus for while we were on an outing together. We were going to a seminar, and he was deeply involved in public relations and social responsibility. And I really didn't know much at all about it. But he works for a nonprofit, which is called the End Fund, and he taught me all about international diseases that affect water and blindness in children. So a whole new pocket world of learning as a result of that relationship. Another student, I just had a long drawn out brunch lunch with him prior to the holidays, Cecil. And I think we've been friends and colleagues for 8 or 9 years now. And he's a Bronx community leader, now getting very involved in leadership in government. And he's going to run for office someday. And he's teaching me about sustainability and experiences in his community. And he's applying his skills and interests in New York. So he's teaching me a lot about more political mindset. So it's fascinating.
Well, Leslie, one of the things you mentioned was that when you start a mentorship relationship, you start where that person is at that moment, as opposed to it being a curriculum. How do you identify where that place is? Do you start with an open dialogue? Hey, how can I help you? Or is there a certain structure that you like to initiate in order to identify what somebody really needs?
Well, I think that some of my training has been in the arenas of sales and marketing. So I immediately start to think about planning when I meet my people. And that being said, every personality is a little bit different. So it's not always clear what they might need. So I think the way I have approached it is very tailored, very targeted, and trying to both ask questions and share insight. But each student has a slightly different trajectory. So for me, it hasn't been an organized curriculum. Not to say that that wouldn't be an excellent idea, but mentorship is very dynamic. I mean, I think of you both as being at the top of your game in terms of mentorship, and sometimes I think, wow, how different it could have been if we had mentors earlier and better. And I'll give you one more example. I have a near neighbor. She's 10, and she walks my dog when we travel. And she's taught me an awful lot about art and creativity from her perspective in school, which is a total gift. And I'm thinking, boy, I haven't been 10 years old in a long time, but she's sharing, in live time, some great experiences of where she is. And I think the beauty of it is I am a mother of 3 sons who are now in their 20s. And as part of that, I've had a lot of young people in my life through sports, through activities, community, through schools, over a long, long period of time. And that's been very, very rich. So I personally feel very comfortable talking with the kids, listening to the kids, kind of getting the gist of what it is that ultimately, hopefully, is their intention and helping them to get there.
There are all these studies coming out about, the new way of looking at success. So the old way would be like, work ethic and the goal setting, like kind of doing what you did to climb the corporate ladder. And one very popular term that keeps coming up now is the people that have the most amount of curiosity. So in an organization, if you have curiosity, you just want to understand how the other departments work. You want to understand how your boss is successful. So your story about the 10-year-old, to me, that's so symbolic of you just having like absolute curiosity, because you can learn from other people. And arts is a beautiful thing that somehow in busy lives, it can go away. So I think that's a really cool story. I'd love to ask you, if you are, when you're kind of thinking about setting forward and say you're going to take on a new challenge, and, you definitely have, the confidence to kind of take on something new and do something new. What's like your technique to go from maybe I should do something to, what, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to put my name in the hat for this, whatever the opportunity is, or, something new.
Well, I guess, to some degree, I think of the word fearlessness. And not to say that I always have that mindset, but I think being trained early on, really through sort of a kitchen table startup alongside of my dad, who taught me a lot. He was an entrepreneur, and he had given, I think, a couple of decades to a very traditional corporate experience. And then he went out on his own somewhere in the range of when I was age 13. And just the sheer ability to step up and step out with a good idea, sometimes if you fly the flag up the flagpole, it's unbelievable. Other times you might have to just sort of dust off and move on. So I think that characteristic is something that I can attribute to early on, just being able to take a couple of risks here and there. But I think it all just depends on, where your passion lies and where you really want to spend your time and your energy and your abilities at this stage of my life. And that's, it's a rich place to be, in the sense that you can focus on your highest priorities.
Okay. Every time I want to ask a question, my dog decides to start barking. I apologize.
Leslie, we have a dog, Jameson, that would like to ask you a question.
She's very curious. Okay, speaking of fear and mentorship, and I've been on both sides of the mentor coin. So I've mentored people and I've been mentored. And I know that there's obviously risk, but there's a lot of fear about taking on a challenge that's a stretch goal for you. It's something you really want, but it's difficult. So we're talking with people that are, still in college or fresh out of school, and they have a dream and they know they need to take that risk. What type of encouragement, what type of steps would you tell someone how they could navigate that fear, that, they can see the other side of the ravine, so to speak, right? They can see where success lies, but they don't know quite how to build that bridge. How would you advise them?
Well, I think of a story with one of my students, Jay. He was approximately a junior in college at the time, and he was extremely well trained in the sciences, very technical, working in computer science and data analytics and some new spaces that I was, very interested to learn more about. And so we navigated in conversation just the whole laying of groundwork as it related to reaching out to people. And he was very shy. And so just in process of conversation, we kind of worked through a variety of different scenarios, just very comfortably and simply. Then he got a big interview, and I remember I was driving, it was teeming rain. I get a phone call on my cell phone from Jay, and he's just about to walk into this interview, and he was somewhat panicked. And I just pulled over into the parking lot of the train station, and we talked it through for 12 minutes. And I said, look, here's your scenario. What's the worst that's going to happen? Nothing. You're going out to make new friends, and they're going to become part of your network. So just go be yourself. And if you end up talking about sports, that's also okay. So anyhow, just to brag, Jay landed the internship. He went to work for the company full time. He's 3 years into it, and he's a scientific researcher in cancer up in Cambridge. But anyhow, it was a great experience. I don't know if that answers your question, but I love your visual of standing, holding the rope, and jumping over the ravine.
You said something that just made me smile like crazy. You're going in there. What's the worst that can happen? You make friends and new connections. I mean, like we put people that we're interviewing with on these pedestals. Like there's no way we could ever even have a relationship with them because they are this mystery person that holds all the power to our future, when in reality they're just another connection. And to me that's like, wow, that's like a really simple way to look at that. Thank you for sharing that particular insight, because I am now, like, my vision has been cleared a little bit with that idea that it's just another connection.
Well, I mean, and I would tell my students, they, also put their socks on one foot at a time. So, it's just a matter of having a discussion and sharing a few of your highlights and asking questions about the environment, because it's just as important that you have a high comfort level and that it's a good match for you. So.
Yeah, especially like within interviewing, there's so much talent out there, and there's so many companies that are struggling to find the talent, that really the key thing is, are you going to like the job? Like you got to know that going into it, so you don't hit that, at the 6-month mark, and then like you're kind of like, oops. If college students are so focused on the prize of landing the job, they'll have their blinders on and not really recognize if it's the right opportunity for them. So that's great advice.
Yeah, it's not really, it's not really a road race. I remember thinking about a lot of my co-classmates in graduate school would solicit a lot of different types of offers, and you only need one good one. You need a good fit for what it is that you're looking for. And even if it takes a couple of extra months, it's not a road race. So.
That's true. So when you look back on your past, did you have any big challenge, like a big obstacle that you went through? And then now that you can look back on that, you're like, that might have been the best gift. Like it had to happen, because if it hadn't happened, you might not have experienced whatever unfolded afterwards. Do you have any
stories,
experiences like that?
I do. I have plenty of them, but one in particular was my first job after college was selling pharmaceutical products, where I learned a lot about science, and it was pretty analytical. And the role was to educate and communicate with medical professionals, specifically in cardiology. So it was pretty specific. And after a little over a year, I ended up, there was a lot of time spent waiting. You were highly trained, but I didn't really like the fact that there was not as much creative input and flow in my life. So anyhow, I decided more than anything, I really wanted to be a broadcast journalist. So I moved to Denver with a good friend whose family was there and did everything that I could to become a broadcast journalist, including Saturdays and Sundays for a full 6 months, 12-hour days in a newsroom, writing copy and following photographers and getting experience in a portfolio. And at the end of the 6 months, there were two of us, and we had a write off. And the other guy got the job, and I got a collared shirt that had the Channel 9 news on it. And so I had to sort of recalibrate because some of the steps that I was taking for my idealized vision were not unfolding in a practical way after a period of time. So I had to sort of rejigger and acknowledge that that pathway was not necessarily going in a direction that was sustainable. And that was okay. I got rid of my bed. I moved back to the East Coast. I got a job in the publishing business. And I'm so glad, because there was a period of time that I wrote for 6 months. I was a stringer reporter. I did a lot of freelance work. I developed a portfolio. I had a lot of experiences, and it kind of better crystallized some of the possibilities that then unfolded in the next step. Yeah.
That's great. I feel like it's so nice to have the reflective moments recognized. I mean, you've mentioned a few times the arts and writing and things like that. And so for the one job not to work out, and then you had more time to do those freelances and get that creative writing in. So in general, is there one question we always love to ask our the women that we're interviewing is about inspiration. So what keeps you inspired?
So, I've become a really dedicated nature lover. And actually, this is, it's a nice unfolding. When I was a little kid, on a Saturday morning, we'd get tossed outside. And so there was not a lot of structured activities. And in our household, anywhere you needed to go, you had to get to on your bike anyway. So I spent a lot of time outdoors. And high school years as a summer camp counselor up in Vermont, with pretty minimal accommodations. And, there's certain experiences, like even being in Girl Scouts, where we were pretty well connected to projects and nature and a little bit of civic do good work. So in terms of inspiration now, I do find that the natural world provides a lot of solace and support. From a creative perspective, I'm convinced that the idea of sort of nurturing creativity with children and within your own life is a really important practice as it relates to health and wellness. And then there's the business implications, because it allows you to think outside of the box and more creatively about solving problems. So for me, initially I used to think it was a little bit of a yin and a yang, because I studied economics and English, which seem like very different skill areas, but it's been, both sides will fuel one another. So creatively, I'm inspired every day by light, and I do a lot of photography, and I'm trying to expand, my own creative practices in new ways. So I'm in a garden club. We're doing some really interesting work in the area of botanical arts, which is sort of an emerging area where you use natural materials to create products like jewelry. So that's kind of a new dimension. Do a lot of conservation work, which is again kind of connected with my love of nature and wellness, and it all feeds into my theme song.
Which is?
Well, the way I think about it is I like to just conduct myself in work and life under a health umbrella. And there's a lot of different pillars of health. And, I'm taking it on as one of my missions to expand my ability to educate, to train, to coach, to communicate, there's a lot of needs, and this is, even prior to COVID, but especially in the mental and well-being space, I feel like there's just gentle nudges that I can provide in different formats at different times, at different groups to um, cast a positive light or a positive lens on wellness.
And Leslie, if people wanted to learn more about mentorship or about even the 361 firm and the work that they do there with the collaborative networks, how can they find out more information?
So 361 firm.org, actually, you can learn more about the organization, but essentially it's pretty diverse in the sense that it's made up of people who many of whom have lots of different projects that they work on, but it represents people who are in funds and foundations, or they're investors. They might be academics, content creators, thought leaders, and a lot of entrepreneurs and aspirational thinkers. So the intention is to do well and to do good. So that's sort of the directional goal. It is a collaborative network. There are on the ground in-person events, which were much more frequent prior to the COVID experience. But there's just incredible depth of educational exchange, very dynamic, pretty fluid, across a lot of different frontiers. So you can find a lot of friends and colleagues and go deeper into the issues that are important to you, which is one of the intentions at this time. We're heading into February now. And so one of the hopes is that we'll develop some programming around health that's related to food, nutrition, and well-being, as an example. And there's many dimensions of that could be extrapolated, but the intention is just to kind of create accurate information so that people can walk away with some good ideas. And whether that guides their investments, or it guides their life and their family, or just helps them navigate the next week, it's a very supportive group of colleagues.
I am continually impressed with the stories and the connections that you have made, and your love for being able to share wisdom with others, because really so many times we get wrapped up in our own scenarios, but when we are able to go out and help the next generation and have the next generation help us to understand where they are and where we can go for their vision, I think it's very important. And I really want to thank you for stopping by. This is Revel Coach Plus, because it's better together, hashtag. And for anybody who's joining us, we are glad you're here. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. If there's a little thing there, you can look and hit subscribe. And Leslie, we are so glad you're here. I'm Allison Nissen, Marcy Stout, and Leslie McCarthy. Thank you so much for stopping by.
Thank you.
Thank you.